Hey everybody, Jesu Otaku here, and once again I find myself struggling to finish a full series for review on top of everything else I've been juggling about, but it's not fair of me to slack off, and I miss making good reviews, so I figured I'd put out something halfway decent for you guys before taking off for Anime Central this weekend. Yeah, if you're gonna be at Anime Central in Chicago and you see me walking around, be sure to say hi. Anyhow, this is a countdown of my favorite sessions from a little anime you might have heard of called Cowboy Bebop. I don't think it's fair of me to say best sessions, although I will explain why I like the episodes I do, because Bebop covers such a wide swath of tones and influences, and I think everybody responds to each episode a little differently. I do think these are some of the better vignettes still. I mean, I am singling out 10 out of only 26, but be sure to share your own favorites in the comments too. This was hard to put together as it turns out, because there really isn't a single episode of Cowboy Bebop I don't like. I like all of them in some small way, even the more unpopular outliers like Sympathy for the Devil, which works best in hindsight, by the way. Watch the end of the series and then watch Sympathy for the Devil right afterward and see if it changes your perception at all. But I should clarify that I like every episode of Bebop, except Boogie Woogie Feng Shui. It's terrible and nothing about it works at all. Yes, I've seen it a couple times. I'm sorry if you like it. I have no words for you. I just really hate that episode. I also really wanted to count the movie as one big long episode and put it in the countdown, and then ultimately decided against it. It would be high on my list, I guess, but again, it's a bigger budget movie, so I guess that's cheating. So yeah, episode 21 aside, I love everything about Bebop, and this will just cover a tiny portion of that. It is pretty much spoiler-free for newbies, but if you haven't seen the show, I don't know how much of this will make sense to you, so go check it out immediately afterward, okay? You won't be disappointed. Number 10 is Session 10, Ganymede Elegy. Sure, I may be a bit of a sheep for counting Bebop among my favorite anime, but I'm a little odd in another way. By far, my favorite member of the Bebop crew is Jet Black, probably the least popular choice among fans. Yes, Spike's cool, I guess, Ed and Ein are cute, and Faye is... okay. I've always seen Faye as a total bitch who's more critically interesting to analyze than likable in any personal way, that's just me, but Jet is my favorite member of the Bebop, and apart from that episode that shall not be named, I think his episodes were really thoughtful and maturely constructed. Ganymede Elegy is a good example of this. In this story, Jet flies back to his home port to drop off a bounty head and runs into an old flame that he never really reconciled with. Most of Jet's episodes are oddly cruel to him, continually suggesting that he's the sort of man who has no place left in the real world because he's too stubborn and tied to his convictions. He's a solid rock, but this often leaves him lonely.
After 6 months, I made a kind of bet with myself. A pledge. That I would leave this planet and start a new life. If you didn't return by the time the watch stopped. I didn't come here to blame you. I just wanted to know why.
Ganymede Elegy is one of the few episodes that acknowledges this will make life hard for him, but also rewards him for his convictions. I like the relaxed pace overall, I like the use of sound and music at various breaks to let us into the characters' minds, and I love the ultimate resolution of Jet's visit back home. It's an oddly comforting episode without losing its slightly tragic realism, and a good pick for my number 10. Number 9 is Session 8, Waltz for Venus. First of all, if I could live on any of the terraformed planets in Bebop, I'd definitely pick Venus. I mean, look at it. It's modern and glitzy, but not as crowded and urban as Mars, or as dangerous and dumpy as various other places like Callisto or, well, Earth. The only thing you have to worry about, apart from sounding extremely silly if you don't take that anti-helium medication...
You brought it on yourself. We're pushing it!
...is potentially going blind from the plot convenience dust that rains down from the clouds at the turn of the season, which gives us the premise for this episode. In Waltz for Venus, Spike assists a bounty head instead of capturing him, in the hopes of getting him out of hot water with the smugglers who hold the cure to his sister's blindness. It's a very simple story, and unlike most others on this list, doesn't have anything special in the way of animation or music to really make it stand out. But I guess I just like the ideas at work here, and how Spike's involvement in Roko and his sister's life reflects his character. Because in Spike's case, we need all the help we can get in understanding why he does anything he does. There's a lot of honest humor here to counter the sadder stuff too, and the tone of the whole episode feels very uniform. It's a simple story told well in a unique environment, and I've always enjoyed rewatching it, so I place it here at number 9. Number 8 is Session 17, Mushroom Samba. I actually think I like this episode a lot less than most people, or at least that's my guess. Because I swear, anytime anyone brings up favorite Bebop episodes, I hear one of 3 answers, which are admittedly all on my countdown, so I'll point out the other 2 when we get there. But many people's favorite episode seems to be, quote, the one where everybody gets high as a kite. Yes, this happens, everybody be totally crunked, har har har. But the other reason everybody loves this episode is it's the only one that pretty much stars Edward. And no, I don't count Hard Luck Woman, come on, that's Faye with a good deal of Ed just thrown in. I'm actually not a huge fan of Edward. I'm not in the Ed hater camp. She's cute and all, but critically speaking, I do think she was the show's biggest flaw. She was comic relief, and that's it. And unlike the cute puppy dog, her brand of goofy was kinda tone dissonant from everything else in the show. So, why do I like this episode? Because it's pretty clear that the writing staff just shouted, "Oh, why the hell not," in making it. It's a blaxploitation parody revolving around hallucinogenic mushrooms, starring the child character and the dog. The way it plays out is hilarious and wrong and clever and stupid all at the same time, and perhaps because it stars Ed, it just stands out so much from everything else in the series. Everyone remembers it for good reason, and it wasn't just all the tripping out. Certainly worth a spot at number 8. Number 7 is Session 16, Black Dog Serenade. Yep, it's another Jet episode, and once again it's a vignette that forces him to confront his past and face the ugly truth that he isn't making much of a future. Speaking of ugly truths, I love this episode, really I do, but having seen it many times, I suppose I should be honest in admitting that the basic story here is a sad, worn-out, leathery cliché. Jet is called in for a favor by one of his old buddies on the Force. He asks him to come back to the ISSP for one last mission and take vengeance on the assassin who wrecked his left arm and has now hijacked a prison transport a la Con Air. I mean, the words "one last mission" kind of sum up the play-by-play here, and while we obviously know Jet isn't gonna die, many other cliché predictions you can make about this story are bound to come true. But wow, it's really all in the execution, because beat for beat, line for line, this is an impressive, underrated, and pretty much perfect episode. There are a lot of great lines here, a surprising amount of subtlety.
It needs to be repaired.
Faye, I told you I'd fix it.
I mean your arm. Reconstructive surgery? It doesn't cost that much these days, you know?
This ship is my ship, and this arm is my arm. I don't need instructions.
And the action set pieces are pretty intense. It takes that old buddy cop material and makes something striking and memorable out of it, probably the most mature of the standalone episodes. From a filmic standpoint, you could actually use it to teach a class on editing if you wanted to. Oh well, I guess no one cares about that part, huh? Just me. It has gore, explosions, terse drama, and badass Jet Black. That's worth a number 7 spot all by itself. Number 6 is Session 18, Speak Like a Child. You know, I'm just gonna let Jet take this one.
Actually, this story doesn't go anywhere. At first glance, it's pointless. The actions are on a small scale, and the ending is forced.
I'm not really sure I can add anything to that. In some ways, this episode is like Toys in the Attic. It's a shaggy dog joke that builds up slowly to a groan-worthy payoff. It's very well made. I mean, what in this series wasn't at least well constructed? Except that... Anyway, I don't think I can explain why I like this one so much. I mean, besides that, it's also kind of a Faye episode, and I think I've established that I'm not really crazy about Faye. Oh, well maybe that's why I like it. Speak Like a Child builds to not 1, not 2, but 3 little twist endings all at once, and the ultimate payoff is rather halting both for the audience and much more cruelly to Faye Valentine. I remember the first time I saw this episode thinking it was slow and repetitive and that I knew where it was going, so why was it taking so long to get there, and then being kind of speechless after it ended. I got in such an about face from that last 3 minutes that I didn't know what I thought at all, and as it turns out, this episode, much like Sympathy for the Devil, works better on a rewatch, both of the episode itself and of the whole series. I can't say much else about it without spoiling the payoff, but if the overall story here doesn't do it for you, I think everybody at least finds the Bebop's doofy fascination with an antique videotape pretty funny.
What the hell is it?
It's not ticking like it's about to blow?
And so, Speak Like a Child takes its spot at number 6. Number 5 is Sessions 12 and 13, Jupiter Jazz, Part 1 and 2. Yes, I'm counting the two-parters as one session here. I mean, it says Part 1 and Part 2, they're really the same story, so how could I split it up? Fans of Bebop know that in its 26-episode run, only 5 episodes covered an overarching plot, and 4 of those were in two-parters, essentially making it a trilogy of plot in a big morass of multi-tonal standalones. The funny thing is, while the beginning and end of this trilogy, so to speak, are extremely well-liked, people seem to forget about the middle portion, Jupiter Jazz, or more often, just don't like it at all. In their defense, well, it's weird. The main villain, Vicious, does reappear, but Spike's involvement with him is minimal, and the whole escapade the crew goes through is a meaningless waste of effort caused by misunderstanding, discord, and a stupid red herring. But I think that's kind of the point of the episode, and I love it for its maturity and depth, much like I love Jet's best episodes. In their own bizarre way, I think the Jupiter Jazz sessions do the best job of illustrating the core themes of Bebop. What we think we need in life versus what we really need. With a focus here on relationships, even breaking down and subverting some tropes about friendship and romance and where and why those lines can cross. These episodes are kinda slow, kinda uncomfortable, and like I said, not a fan favorite despite being exceptionally well written. But I love them, and I think they're well worth a second look. Pay close attention, and maybe you'll enjoy them more too. I place them firmly at my number 5. Number 4, Session 20, Pierrot Le Fou. Oh my word, the animation in this episode is glorious. For Cowboy Bebop, that's saying a lot, as it looked phenomenal not just for 1998, but by today's standards pretty much all the time. But Pierrot Le Fou is a feast for the eyes in every way. It's trippy, terrifying, and bursting with epic action scenes. There's far less dialogue in this episode than any other, not just because it's almost all ass-kicking and explosions, but even the moments that aren't rely on music and silence to carry the creepy atmosphere throughout. It's not all looks, either. Pierrot Le Fou is at least as thought-provoking and clever as a decent episode of The Twilight Zone, and come to think of it, it's even structured like some of the better episodes of The Twilight Zone in terms of cinematography. That brings up another point. Most of the Cowboy Bebop episodes are standalone, but more than any of the others, I think Pierrot Le Fou almost works as a short film. You could take it out of the Bebop verse completely, show it to somebody, and apart from that one moment near the end where they remind you that yes, Spike's eyes are different colors, aren't we clever? It stands up as a really great little horror piece unrelated to any help from the rest of the show. Of course, when I put it like that, it also makes it sound superfluous, but Bebop's writing staff wisely spliced in some details that develop Spike and Faye a little for us, too.
Maybe this is the one I won't come back from, the end. Just playing with your head. Would you rescue me if it were true?
Like Black Dog Serenade, I can't help but think of this as a perfectly constructed episode, and a good candidate for number 4.
Bang.
Number 3 is Sessions 25 and 26, The Real Folk Blues, Part 1 and 2. Okay, everyone knew this was coming. Once again, I'm counting this two-parter, the series finale, as one episode, and it's the second of those 3 episodes I mentioned early on that everyone says is their favorite. And it's also the final part of that trilogy of plot episodes I mentioned. It's the end of the end of the end for the Bebop crew as we know it. Now, to be fair, the end really begins in the previous episode, Hard Luck Woman, which I also enjoy, but not really the whole thing, mostly just the call me sequence and the heartbreaking lead up into it. That aside, though, what can I say about the Real Folk Blues? It's damn good both on its own and as an official ending. And it's an ending dominated by unfairness and avoidability. There's about 20 million if-onlys that you can apply to everything that happens here, but at the same time it feels completely inevitable. And to me, that's one of the ultimate